Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and my first plant video ever. I'm a plant admirer from Jakarta, Indonesia. In this video, I would like to share with you a type of plants that have become one of my favorites, and they are the Dieffenbachias. There are so many Dieffenbachia varieties out there, and a single variety may come with different names that people have assigned to them. So there's lots of confusion surrounding the proper names of some of those different varieties. If you know the proper names for some of the ones I'm showing in this video, please put them in the comments below. The first Dieffenbachia in my collection that I want to show you is the Dieffenbachia amauena. In some English-speaking countries, this is commercially known as Dieffenbachia tropic snow. Where I live, some people traditionally call this Sri Rejeki, which means the goddess of good fortunes. This is one of the most common Dieffenbachias that you can find in public spaces or private homes.
I just love how the green rib at the center of the leaf contrasts with the lighter colored patches around it.
I have had this plant for about 2 years now, and I have propagated it several times. The second one in my collection is Dieffenbachia compacta. I'm not sure if that is the proper ID or just a commercial name, but I haven't been able to find any other names for it in the English vocabulary. But where I live, people call it Anggun Ayu, which literally translates to elegant beauty. If we look at the foliage of this particular variety, it's not difficult to see why it deserves that name. The leaves are wide and take on a more rounded shape compared to the elongated shape that is more commonly seen on the other Dieffenbachia varieties. The next Dieffenbachia in my collection is the Dieffenbachia tikki. In Indonesia, some people call it Selendang Putri, which translates to the princess shawl. This variety is considered a smaller Dieffenbachia type. I would say that this is a medium-sized variety. The leaves are long and pointy, and the front side of the leaves is a combination of dark green, grayish green, and creamy white. That color combination gives this plant a pale appearance. The front and back sides of the leaves look like they have been reversed. For that reason, some people refer to this plant as the Dieffenbachia reversed leaf. The next Dieffenbachia variety in my care is, in my opinion, one of the most stunning of all Dieffenbachias. It is the Dieffenbachia reflector. Some people refer to it as Dieffenbachia cheeta. Just by looking at it, you can immediately see that its look is on another level compared to the other varieties.
One unique feature of this plant is that its leaf has got these ripples that give the plant just a luxurious look. Then, if you look at the rib at the center of the leaf, it becomes shiny, almost glowing when it is exposed to bright sunlight. That is very, very special. The one that I have here is obviously juvenile, so I can't wait until I see more leaves come out of this one.
The next plant on my list is currently my most favorite one, and that is the Dieffenbachia bigband. It is called the bigband because it is, well, big. In Indonesia, this is usually referred to as Panglima, which literally means the commander. The foliage is classic green with no variegation on it, but the midribs on the leaves are super large, which is one of the main features on this variety. Another standout characteristic of this plant is the coloration of the stem. Just the sheer size of the stem already gives this plant a sturdy look. Then there are wide variegation lines on it, which add to the overall muscular look of the plant. The one that I have here is still a juvenile, but just look at the size of those leaves. This one came from the mother plant that is about 3 times the size of this one, so they do grow to be pretty big. Next on my list is the variegated bigband. Where I live, this is often called the panglima variegata. I got this one from an online marketplace and it was delivered by mail. When it arrived, the leaves were bound very tightly inside the narrow packaging box. They were scarred and bruised in several places. I was a bit afraid that the plant would not survive, but it has been a few weeks since it arrived and currently it is recovering quite nicely. I have not seen a particularly large variegated bigband, as generally variegated plants are smaller than their more classical green counterparts. The next one on my list is the Dieffenbachia bombastic, and this one is a monster. It is the largest in my collection. Some people refer to it as Dieffenbachia Mary, and this one was sold to me as Dieffenbachia Raja. This one is a mature plant, but it can even grow bigger to twice the size it is now. The foliage is dominated by the cream color with some small dark green patches sprinkled all over in no particular pattern. On the young leaves, the midribs are variegated,
But as new and more mature leaves grow, the ribs become predominantly white.
the combination of the coloration of the leaves and just the sheer size of this plant is just breathtaking. Once you have your eyes set on this one, it's very difficult to look away. You just want to keep looking at it for a long time. This plant is currently infected by mealybugs, so I am treating it with pesticide. So it seems to be doing fine now, but I'm just gonna come back and check on it in the next few days. The stem is also variegated, very similar to the big ben, and that just adds to the amazing look of this plant. Just look at that coloration. It just looks awesome. This particular variety is not commonly available, and actually this one is the only one that I have seen with my own eyes. I have seen several videos and pictures of it online, but this is the only one that I have ever seen personally. Next on my list is the Dieffenbachia stanley, and this one is also going to be a monster when it matures.
At a glance, the Stanley can be mistaken for the Big Ben and vice versa, because they do look very similar.
They both come in that classical green color and both have those fat midribs on their leaves, but the stanley does not come with variegated stems. In my opinion, the Big Ben looks a bit leaner and cleaner, while the stanley comes across as more muscular and rougher around the edges, but both are definitely a keeper.
I found this one almost by accident at a place near my house.
At the time, I didn't know the name of this plant. I thought it was a big band and it was offered at a cheap price. So I decided to take it home, and the seller was willing to let it go for a very cheap price in my opinion. I paid about $4 for this size, so I'm happy with it. And it was only later that I did some research and found out that this is in fact the stanley, so I'm very happy to have it. This one is also currently infested by mealybugs, so I'm treating it with pesticides. So hopefully that'll take care of the problem soon.
The next one on my list is something that I acquired pretty recently. This was sold to me as Dieffenbachia Army, but I'm pretty sure that's not the proper name for it. After doing a little bit of research, I am inclined to believe that this could be Dieffenbachia sublime. I'll put a picture of the mature plant on the screen. The color pattern on the leaves has that dark green and yellowish light green combination that reminds me a lot of the reflector. But the midribs on this one are green instead of white.
The main stem also appears to be variegated, very similar to what we see on the bigband and the bombastic. I really do hope that this one is the Dieffenbachia sublime, but whatever it is, I think it's gonna look fantastic.
Next on my list is the Dieffenbachia silver. Just by looking at the foliage, it is easy to understand why it is called by that name. Many people also refer to it as Dieffenbachia metallic because on the mature plants, the leaves do have that metallic vibe to them. This is considered a small variety and it grows to be bushier than some of the larger varieties. This is supposed to be an easy keeper as they are known as hardy plants.
This particular type is very commonly available and you can get this one for a very reasonable price. A typical price range is between $3 to $5 depending on the condition and the size of the plant.
Next on my list is another recent acquisition and it is the Dieffenbachia sterling. It is also commonly referred to as Dieffenbachia octopus. In Indonesia, people refer to it as Dieffenbachia gurita. I guess that name comes from the fact that the mid ribs have sort of like tentacles that reach outward to the edges of the leaf, I guess. It looks very stunning.
The one that I have here is still considered a baby, and when it came in the mail, it was pretty beat up from the journey, so the leaves were pretty damaged.
It is still recuperating and it looks like it's going to make it just fine. It is also considered a smaller variety with rounded leaves and it grows to be quite bushy.
The next one that I have is often mistaken for Dieffenbachia sterling. This one is Dieffenbachia green magic. By looking at the leaves, we can easily see why the two varieties are often mistaken for one another. The ribs on the leaves on the green magic are not as elaborate as those on the sterling, and the leaves themselves do not grow to be as rounded. The one I have here is in propagation. I cut the top of the plant and planted it again in the pot. As you can see here, new growths are already starting to come out of the old stem. This is also a smaller Dieffenbachia variety and it doesn't grow to be as large as the amauena, for example, but it still looks beautiful. This next one has also created confusion as far as naming is concerned. In Indonesia, this is widely known as Dieffenbachia lukisa cheeta, which translates to the painting of love. A lot of people consider this plant to be an aglaonema, and I can see why they think it is. There isn't enough information out there regarding the proper Latin or English ID for this plant,
But the few sources that I found refer to this as the Dieffenbachia picta.
the coloration on the leaves is just stunning. It looks like a watercolor painting, hence the local name, the painting of love, I guess. The pattern is uniquely characterized by the white edges on the leaves, which we don't see on any other varieties. This is a smaller variety which tends to grow quite bushy, but the growth is very slow.
I haven't seen a particularly large one, so I don't think they grow to be very big.
The coloration on the leaves reminds me a lot of Calathea white fusion.
But unlike the white fusion, which is known to be very finicky, this one can take a good range of different growing conditions and it'll do just fine. This next one was sold to me as Dieffenbachia garuda. The word garuda is the name of a mythical bird that comes from old Eastern traditions. But from my research, I found some pictures of Dieffenbachias that their owners call garuda. I will put them on the screen. You see that they grow to be very large, but their leaves take on a more rounded shape and appear to have a different variegation pattern than the one that I have here.
So I'm not so sure what I have here.
The one that I have here, I think closely resembles the Dieffenbachia bombastic, but I guess I will have to wait and find out until my plant becomes mature. The last one on my list is the most mysterious of them all. It is certainly a Dieffenbachia and it is variegated, but the variegation is not as pronounced as on the other Dieffenbachia varieties. The seller thought that this is a variegated bigband, but there are marked differences between this one and the variegated bigband that I have. For one, the leaves on this one are wider and less pointed. Secondly, the mid-ribs are not as fat as those that are typical of bigbands. For these two reasons, I don't think that this is a bigband. So if you know what variety this is, please leave your comment below.